for providing this briefing. Also wish to thank Sangeeta Bhatt for agreeing to anchor this program. Just a few words about this research data management. We'll be hearing a lot from our resource persons. It is a term that describes the organization, storage, preservation, and sharing of data collection in a research project. It involves the everyday management of research data during the lifetime of a research project. It also involves decisions about how data will be preserved and shared after the project is over. Formerly, the research data, which was used to produce the results, remained hidden with the researcher. But now, this valuable scholarly product can be reused, shared, and also reanalyzed. Hence, research data management is very important as it saves time and resources and helps to preserve this fragile digital data. Now, may I request Sangeeta to please introduce Dr. Bhakti. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam. Dr. Bhakti Gala is an assistant professor at the School of Library and Information Science, Central University of Gujarat. Dr. Gala received Master of Library and Information Science and PhD from Department of Library and Information Science at Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. She is the recipient of the 2014 ASIS and T Best International Research Paper Award by Taylor and Francis in Seattle, USA. And her research work on financial information literacy through public libraries was shortlisted as finalist 2019 Best Short Research Paper Award at the iConference 2019, Washington, D.C. Dr. Gala has worked on international funded projects funded by OCLC, ALISC, ASIS&T, and the University of Hong Kong. In 2022, she led a team of 7 researchers from 5 Asian countries on the project on health information literacy. She was awarded the 2022 Christus Librarian Leadership Award by ASIS&T for her leadership role in leading the project and her active collaboration in the South Asian region. Her research work is shared through publications in leading international, national journals, and conference presentations. Her research interests are information literacy landscape, cultural heritage, metadata, digital libraries, open content, and public libraries. We welcome you, Bhakti Madam. Over to you.
You are muted, Bhakti.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Before I begin, I would just like to make it clear that today we are jointly presenting, Manu and myself, so that there will not be a breakup in our presentation, I request you to introduce Manu also before we begin with our presentation, if that's fine.
Sure. Okay. Madam, I introduce.
Yes.
Mr. Manu Tia is working as Assistant Librarian at Central Library, Indian Institute of Technology, New Delhi. Before joining the IIT Delhi, he worked as Deputy Librarian at Adani Institute of Infrastructure, Ahmedabad, Gujarat, and IIT Gandhinagar as a library professional. He has qualified UGC NET and is currently submitted his PhD thesis at the CUG Gandhinagar. He holds MLIS from the Department of Studies in Library and Information Science, University of Mysore, Karnataka. He has edited a conference proceeding and published research papers in UGC CARE listed journals, book chapters, and presented papers and posters at national and international conferences. His area of research interests includes research data management, research support services, scholarly communication, open access, and institutional repository. We welcome you, Manu, sir. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Sangeeta ma'am, for these introductions. I will first begin by thanking Rhoda madam and ADINET for providing us with this opportunity to share our work with the community of ADINET here. And I also thank you for giving us a chance to basically even be here with you. I know that there were multiple postponements to today's event. So I'm glad we are here with you. Today's presentation, before I begin, I will request Manu to start sharing our screen, the presentation.
Yeah, I'm going to start now.
Yeah, please do. As Rhoda ma'am has already given you the topic, which is their research data management services. And the topic itself talks about the core word which you see in the title, which is research data management and focusing on research. So what I'm going to do today is our presentation, we have divided it into multiple sessions. And Manu, if you could just show the next slide, I will describe to the audience how our presentation is going to be flowing today. Okay, so we will be beginning with an introduction to this concept of RDM, or research data management. And our flow content is essentially going to be, we talk about what is research data, because that is at the core of this whole concept. And then, of course, the RDM as the concept, as the overview of the concept, the principles behind it, who are the people involved in it, which are the services which can be provided, the tools and technologies, and all the related concepts with RDM. What we have planned to do is that I will be beginning my part of the presentation in introducing to all of you what is RDM and why are we talking about it? Why is it important that we start this discussion on a very newly emerging area? And most of our audience members, we are students, library professionals, or maybe academicians. All of us are going to be quite affected by what this, and it's important for us to be in touch with the newly evolving concepts. So I will be talking about what and why RDM, and Manu will be then taking over for this presentation and talking about the detailed presentation about how are you going to be providing the services. So if you as a librarian, or if you as a library student are interested in knowing about the details of how to implement the RDM services, then what are the skills that you need to know? What are the tools and technologies that you need to know about? Those are the issues which Manu will be covering. So I will now begin with my presentation. As of course, the title suggests, research data management. And research is something, if we look at the terminology, Manu, you can go to the next slide. If we look at the terminology, research involves two words. Essentially, it's that is RE plus search, research. It's just repeatedly searching over and over and over again for multiple things. When you are talking about research, it is a very systematic inquiry into any concept, whether it is scientific, social sciences, humanities. We are all involved in research. We are also involved in research as library professionals, because we are going to be, whether you are working in a public library or you are in an academic library, you're going to be closely looking at and asking questions to how to maybe improve your services, or how to assist your your audience or your users if they are involved in any kind of research projects. So when we talk about research, as I said, it's a repetitive process. It's a repetitive inquiry into a specific concept that is there, that an individual is researching. So it is a continuous investigative process. And during this process, what happens is we can see that a lot of data is generated. As Rhoda madam spoke about it in her description, that this research is all about data, which is going to be either newly generated, or maybe it is existing and you want to use the data, but it comes down to data. Now, just to give you a small idea about, I'm going to present a backdrop of this kind of a study. And I would like to say that because Manu and I have been working on this from 2017. So it's been a lot of years. We have done a lot of in-depth looking at, although the focus was more on science and technology libraries, but the part of the research, of course, we know that it's being used a lot. Research data is something that has become so critical to all kinds of development which is happening in the society. So just a few figures that I'm sharing is currently, if we look at it, India is actually producing a lot of research data. We talk about research, then the rankings are saying that we are, we rank number 3 in the world in terms of the number of PhDs which are coming out in the area of science and engineering. We are ranking 4th globally in the terms of our research output. When if you look at the Scopus and those kinds of indexing databases, we also are ranking 9th as the 9th largest number in terms of, if you look at just science citation indexes and Web of Science. These are some of the figures to give you an idea why research data, why an analysis into research data and knowing about research data is so important. We are also investing a lot. The government of India is investing a lot of finance and funds into research and development. These are reports which are published in 2021. There are reports which have been published by the Department of Science and Technology in 2022, which are saying that we are one of the leading scientific research countries in the world. And this is the backdrop in which this whole presentation was prepared. That is the importance of research data and research in general. And no research can be done without either generating data or using data. Okay, so if you look at the screen, you can see that the multiple aspects in which research data is being studied is, of course, we want to be doing research in such a way that it would allow everybody to have easy access to it. All the data that you're generating should be usable, findable, and usable. If we let that happen, it is going to be even helping an existing researcher who is starting a new research. I remember from my own personal experiences that, if you want to start research, you want to have at least some existing data, which can maybe reduce the time of time which is going to go into your research. So if you are going to make your research readily available to other researchers, not only are you going to get a lot of visibility for your research, but at the same time, it is also going to help you as a researcher in managing your data. So this whole RDM is actually a very broad, comprehensive umbrella term, which is actually looking at making it easy to access data, making it easy to find the data, helping the researcher in managing your data. And of course, if you make it available, your data will be reused by other researchers. I myself am a prime example of a person who did my PhD using existing data which I requested from another researcher in another part of the world. It saved me almost 8 months of time in doing that data. Of course, it was not easy to get the data for me. I had to send in multiple requests to the researcher who had done preliminary analysis. I kept on requesting them to share the data with me, and because those were times almost a decade ago when data sharing was not something that was prevalent, and it was also almost frowned upon. People thought that you are trying to cut short time, you're trying to copy data, but then actually if there is existing data available, then what happens is, as a researcher, you can move forward and take your work from where the previous research stopped. So it, of course, avoided duplication in the work. Because I was able to get access to that data that was in an Excel file, I did not have to duplicate my work. I just started from where the previous researcher had stopped. And of course, it has also now become a funding, most of the funding agencies do require that you make your data available to other researchers. Not only is that, you will also see in in our talk further that it's not just funding agencies, but also a lot of journal publications are now requesting that submit your articles along with your data, so that validation of the data can also take place. Because there have been a number of instances where fabricated data have been used to manipulate your results. Okay, so in this background, the RDM is playing a very, very critical role. Please go to the next slide, Manu. So as we're talking about data, I will just begin with a brief explanation of what is data. And of course, most of us we do know what is data. Okay, fundamentally, data can be anything. It can be something that is a part of, it can be quantitative, qualitative. These are all terminologies all of you are very familiar with. And it is part of your research work. It is part of a research inquiry process. And it can be used to create new knowledge, of course. It is something which can be reinterpreted, reused, remodified, revamped, any manner. And then data, just the way we used to always work with information and knowledge, we are also now looking at data from the same lens. We are looking at the data from the lens of organizing, from the lens of not only organizing, collecting, organizing, processing, making it available for communication, interpretation, or processing. Okay. And data has become now the key behind every evidence-based work that we are talking about. So if there is a definition which is a slightly, formal definition, which I'm using to explain data to you, that it is any fact. Okay, it is any fact. The fact can be in the terms of an Arabic number. It can be, the data can be, text-based. It can be just a word, okay, or a collection of words. It can be photographs or images, or the data can also be just sounds. It can be anything. It is not limited by its very existence. And it is the primary source. Okay, in any research, data is the primary source that you are going to be collecting to justify your research inquiry, justify your research questions, justify and defend your research objectives. Okay, so this data, of course, is commonly accepted, and it is something which makes the basis for validation of all your findings. For those of you who are students here, maybe whether you are a master's student or a PhD student, you realize the importance of collecting research to defend your questions. And when we look at data, as you can see on the screen, there are, go back to the screen, a previous screen, Manu, just a previous screen. I would just like to touch a little bit about these observational, experimental, simulation, and derived or compiled data, just to give the audience a little bit more knowledge about what we mean by it. So when we talk about observational data, it's not something which is only limited to science and technology. Social sciences, humanities, we all do collect this kind of data. Primarily, when we say observational data, we mean that data which is captured in real time. Okay, it is something that can be collected through a survey or a sample data or anything like that. Okay, so what you as the researcher has observed, that's the data. Your observation can be done through maybe some tools. You're using some tools for noting down your observations, or they can just be something that you have heard and seen. It can be anything. So that's observational data. We also have experimental data, which is very, very specific to the sciences, where you have a lot of laboratory experiments going on, right? And you're using equipments to conduct experiments, and the resultant output data is called as experimental data. Again, it can be anything. It can be a gene sequence, or it can be any kind of data which the scientists are using. Then you have the simulation data, which you can see on the screen. And this, of course, is anything where you have created a model, okay, and this model you are testing it, okay, and you are simulating a real world scenario in maybe a controlled environment, and you are generating data. So this can be, the simulation data is generated from typically test models or pilot studies, okay, and where the model and the data or the metadata are more important, because that is the way you will be describing your data, okay. And then we have the derived data as the last one in this category. Okay, it's something which is a pre-existing data point, as I told you about. That is, if your data is lost, or even you have data which has been taken up as pre-existing data point. This is the data point from where you're going to start your collecting. So some of the examples for this are 3D models or data mining, where a lot of high, very sophisticated programs are being used to essentially not only derive but also compile this data. So these are the four different types of research data which are there. You will come across many of these, and regardless of the fact whether you are doing a social science, because we are nowadays in looking at a lot of fusion research, interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary research, where you may be looking at a humanities point of view and then using computational research methods to do it. So then you will have a lot of derived data. Similarly, you can, I was just reading up about it also, that you can be using a lot of computational methods to even do your archival research. Okay, you may be looking at manuscripts and using computational methods to extract metadata also. So there is a lot of scope of work there, and this is where we are talking about the research data. So just the next slide is showing you the examples of research data. You can see on the screen. The data can, of course, be varied in its form of content, format, method, nature, source and processing. And if we look at these content, of course, as I mentioned in my previous slide, it can be numbers, text, audiovisual, multimedia. In the format, we will find a lot of formats. You see on the right side, the figure is also showing you different formats. You have data can be embedded within a spreadsheet or an Excel file. It can be within a database. It can be a database of images. Data can be, of course, even a map, as we know. There are thousands and thousands of formats for data, available. If you will just even look at the IAE website, you will see there are thousands of extensions, file extensions, which will give you an idea about the variety available in the formats for data sources. There is, of course, the methods, whether the data has been derived through observation, experimental simulation, or compiled, as we just discussed. The data can be digital. Of course, a lot of the data now we are looking at is the big data. We have heard a lot about big data. A lot of it is digital. And then there is also the non-digital data, where you would have actually done a paper survey and collected data. Okay, so we do find data in both forms. And then the data can be, if we look at it from the source point of view, it can be primary or secondary. Okay. And then, of course, it can be processed. You can have raw data you're using without any cleaning, anything, or you may have, gone through some kind of cleaning process to your data. So we do find a variety in their forms of data. And the screen is a little bit, this thing, but you can see the examples there. The examples are also showcasing some of the different file types. These file types will give you an idea about the variety of formats in which data is now applicable. And this is where the challenge is also presented, because to the librarian or to the researcher who is trying to work with this data, knowledge of the different types of data, even if you look at a simple Word file, you'll have multiple file formats. I'm looking at the textual data on the left side is showing you that, it can be a .rtf, it can be a .txt, it can be a .doc, and then there are the different versions. Manu will be, of course, talking about it a little bit more in detail when he comes into it. Manu, the next slide, please. So this is, of course, the data. Now we just look at who generates all this data. I mean, obviously, there is so much of data being generated. And on the screen, as you can see, the faculty, of course, through their research are generating a lot of data. The scientists, okay, are generating data. Faculty who are in all these higher education organizations all over the world and India are required to do data, generate data through their research projects. Scientists which are part of whether it is a government laboratory or government funded departments. We have a plethora of these scientific agencies, and all the scientists who are working in these organizations are also generating vast amount of data, massive, huge amounts of data. Most of the scientists and the faculty members, like, for example, if I just take my example or with Manu working with us, we do have, you have research scholars. Manu is a research scholar who has generated quite a lot of data as part of his research. And then there are postdoctoral fellows who are also, after your PhD, when you do your postdoctoral studies, you may also end up generating a lot of data. Graduate students, as part of their projects, as part of their master's level dissertations, may take up smaller projects, but even then, they do collect data and they generate data as part of their analysis. So a lot of this data is generated as part of analysis, the collection, and then the analysis. And then, of course, the research assistants. You have a lot of research assistants who are part of projects which are undertaken. The projects can be, maybe governmental, not governmental, but one of the primary factors is that the government is the biggest generator of research data, because most of these organizations, whether they are faculty members, scientists, research scholars, are going to be affiliated with the government-run institutions, because that's where the research, the focus is there on research. So these are the different generators of the research data, and each of them is generating data, as I mentioned in the previous slides, the varieties of types of data. Okay, in one research, it is not necessary that you will only generate one type of data. You may generate different varieties of data depending on your research study and your research questions. The next slide, Manu. Okay, so now coming to the the whole concept of research data management. And when we, of course, when we look at the research data management, it is managing this whole research data, which I just described. The variety, the way it is generated, the way it is going to be handled. And it is not necessarily going to be limited to an academic activity. Okay, it is going to be always very, very closely linked to research as an activity. Okay, and data is going to be at the core of any research project, regardless of where is it being conducted. Is it being conducted by the United Nations? Is it being conducted by UNICEF? It is being conducted by our Niti Ayog, anywhere, wherever research is being undertaken, wherever there are questions which are being raised. And it is not just going to be only limited to that, because you may be conducting research to answer a few questions, or maybe you want data to take decisions, policy level decisions. The government also needs a lot of data to go into their policy level decisions. And this is where, again, the data plays a key role. So when we talk about RDM, we are looking at the data as an intellectual object. Okay, we have traditionally, we were always looking at knowledge and information. We are now focusing on data as the intellectual object. And there is, of course, the whole RDM as the concept is looking at how you will plan. It begins with everything, the planning stage of your data collection. What kind of data are you planning to collect? Okay, how will you organize the data you're planning to collect, you have collected? How will you manage the data that is there with you? Where are you going to store it? Because a lot of research generates huge bytes, terabytes of data, and where are you going to store it? Manu will be talking about that also, because these are questions which require a lot of technical knowledge, skills also on the librarian's parts also, and how the library plays a key role in all these processes is what Manu is also going to talk about. How will you back it up? What is the security level for your data? How will you preserve the data? And finally, of course, how will you share this data? So this research data management is looking at every aspect, from the planning to the sharing. There are multiple stages which will be discussed. And coming to the next slide, this whole process is actually guided by the FAIR principles. Okay, and the FAIR principles are playing a okay, sorry. So coming down to the why part before I move on to the FAIR principles is, of course, because initially, my initial discussions, I did mention that why RDM is important. But some of these, of course, I've already told you that it is a funding grant requirement, and the integrity of your research, the ethics of your research are more validated when you share your data. If you're not ready to share your data, nowadays, the scenario is such that there is a question mark on the validity and integrity of your research. And of course, you want the data to be, because you're going to be sharing it, you are going to ensure that your data remains very accurate. Okay, it's very authentic and reliable. And at the same time, it is going to save the time and the resources of not only the researcher who is conducting the research, but all the future researchers also who plan to take up this research in any area. If you are going to save your data, I mean, RDM helps a researcher in not only ensuring that your research is available for a very long time, because you're going to be keeping it in one place. And at the same time, it will, of course, save in the duplication. Allows the verification, data integrity I've already spoken about. And of course, the push behind it is that you make your data as openly accessible as possible. And of course, this will also help you in getting collaborators to do more work. So before I conclude, I will be talking just one more thing about the process of the RDM. So as I said, it begins with the planning. That is, before you even start doing your research, you should have a research data management plan. Manu will be talking more about it. You also then will be, when the planning stage will actually look into it and see to it that all your collection, organizing, disseminating, sharing, and the storage and preservation and backup part is, done at continuous levels during your entire research life cycle. And then, of course, you are ultimately, after research, you are ensuring the long-term sustainability of your data research so that it remains available for sharing for a long time. So this is how the research data management workflow takes place, and Manu will be looking into it a little bit more. The next slide. So this is, of course, the core principles behind which are guiding the whole RDM as a workflow process. And these, of course, principles were established critical components of this whole process, which is your data should be findable, okay, and you will find we have it should be interoperable and it should be reusable. Okay, there as an is governed by making your data more findable in giving appropriate metadata, making it accessible by using metadata which are on some standards based metadata, using open protocols there that thereby making it more interoperable, and of course seeing to it that your data sense that it will, if you make it available repositories, it will be reusable also. So now I'm going to ask Manu to take over, and he will be
Yes, but excuse me, Bhakti. I think Manish Mankad had raised his hand. He probably wants to ask you a question. So before Manu takes over, Manish, would you like to ask something? Yes, Manish. Are you there? Manish is not audible. Vaibhav?
Ma'am, I have already given him the rights. He
You
has
have?
unmuted
Okay.
himself, but
Okay.
I think he is not, Manish ji is not speaking as of now, maybe. Because he has unmuted himself, yeah.
Okay. So we can ask him to ask a little later. So Manu, would you like to continue?
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank you, ma'am. And
powering on.
yeah, can I continue?
Connected.
I don't know. Manish has again raised his hand. Manish, would you like to ask something?
Ma'am, what we can do, we can take at the end some of the questions if he is having.
We can. Yes, we can do that.
I
You
will-
please continue. Yes.
Thank you very much. And first of all, yeah, as I mentioned that, yeah, thank you very much for giving these opportunities. And as Bhakti ma'am,
Powering on. Connected.
and Varada ma'am is already given the brief introduction about the concept, what is about the RDM and what is the research data and how it is important in the recent scholarly communication systems, and who are the stakeholders and who are looking for the research data management being properly managed and make that data reusable to the public. Now, for my part, I want to begin with majorly, the RDM stakeholders and the RDM services part, and also I'll put some touch up with the what can library can play the role, and also what is the policies by the publishers and the scholar and the funding agencies, including in India and internationals, and at the end I also given the some of the fact about the data collected during my research, what is the Indian scenario about the RDM. I mean, so, yeah, that will be the more covering about my part. To begin with, in RDM stakeholders, as Madam was mentioning, that it's a collective work. When we wanted to do the RDM, research data management, and create the best practices, it's a collective work. It's a right from the involvement of the many peoples. Like, we are the library professionals and we wanted to start these services. We need to collaborate with the who are the data creators, and we comes as a libraries, comes as a facilitators, and the government at large and users. Then when you look at the data creators, as Mentor mentioned, the who are the data creators, we have to collaborate with them, and they are the major stakeholders of the RDM because they are having the all the rights and they are the basic data creators. And when it comes to the facilitators, yeah, libraries can play the major role in terms of the facilitators, but also it's being with the institutional leadership and also the academic and research units and computer centers. We need all the other supports to create the best practices. And when it comes to the government at large, it always good to have the policies kind of at the large. Instead of having the institution level policies, if we have the policies, I'll be having one slide about the policies. Now if we have the policies at the government and funding agency level, that will going to that will going to help us to create the best practices. At the end, the users, how the user research data going to be used. Once research data is publicly available, they have to be used the research data with giving the proper acknowledgements, proper the citations, and the permission need to be taken wherever required. And this is the slide we're going to talk about the RDM stakeholders. To begin with, we as a library professionals, we all know that we have been providing the research support services. Research support services, it's a support services which will going to help you to help the researcher to do the research activities throughout the research life cycle. Now, there's a common services. I've been leading the citations, literature alerts, and research contents in copyright and IP advance. Now there are interesting things being added like research information management systems and the research data management services. The trends been the libraries been extending their services, looking at what does mean by the research information management systems and what are those services can help to the researchers, and also research data management services. The why the library, why we wanted to take the initiative as a library professionals, because as from the fundamental side, we have the information hub of the research activities, and the library is like we have the multiple scales, and we have been multidisciplinary. We know all the knowledge, not an expertise. At least we know that what's been happening in the particular research area, how we can help, and we know the different stakeholders at each level of the research activities. Means if you want to start from the research, the library can help how the research can be started, where are the sources to find the good research questions, research objectives kind of things. Such way, every activity, every step of the research, a library can help. Libraries can help to conduct the good research, and they can be partner with the researcher and research support units and also other RDM stakeholders of the institute. That's the reason the library can play the major role for creating the best practices of RDM services in any of the institute. Some of the activities we have given, and later on I'll be explaining this widely. Some of the activities, these are the activities that library can play, like the RDM planning, research data curations, literacy and advocacy. Those things libraries can play with the major roles. RDM services life cycles. Yeah, this is one of the life cycle of the RDM service. Actually, see, these life cycles have been mentioned by Bhakti ma'am already. We are identifying the each services or the libraries or the services can be offered at the each cycle. Like we will going to explain that in terms of the at the stage of the research data plan and design, what are the services can be offered. And the same way, collect and capture and collaborate and analysis and manage, store and preserve and save. All these stages, there are some library can play the roles and provide the RDM services to the users. To begin with, this is how to begin with the plan and design. When we start with the plan and design, it's always the first step of the researcher going to be take the research activities. See, I'm not going to be mention all the services here. What we have mentioned that now we can say that introduction to research data management, the basic things we wanted to start to begin with creating awareness. Maybe the researchers have aware about that they have been managing the research in a irrespective way, but we wanted to create an awareness among them the how and why research data management important, and how that research data management or the RDM is going to help their research visibility or creating or establishing their career well. And the second thing is a research data planning. Now, recently, especially the funding agencies have been asking the researchers to support the data management plan, like DMP. It's an outline. It's an outline what the researcher has to submit to giving the entire planning of the research. where it is begins and how they're going to collect the data, where they're going to store, and who hold the copyright at the hand, what are their publications, and where they're going to share the data. Those plannings, they have to be, researcher has to be given along with the proposals. It means here, as a library professionals, as a service, they can establish the checklist, the best practices, or there are some online tools there are for helps to creating the data management plan. Those that can be given the guidelines to the researchers. The more important is a policy compliance. What we practically experienced when we had interact with the faculties, when we had interact with the researchers. If we wanted to start the RDM services in any of the institute or any of the universities, means how that we're going to practically work. Whether if we are going to directly start that, whether the researcher willing to share the data, the researcher willing to means coordinate with the faculty, with the libraries and other people to make the data to publicly available. But when this question is raised, but the most of people said, most of researchers said in India, they are saying that they are still confused whether why they wanted to give the research data to the public. Right, because they said because they are saying that unless they don't have any policies, they don't have any restrictions, they don't have any policies or any guidelines of, if they are not getting any benefits, they're not going to share the data, right? Because that's why the policy compliance of the RDM will play the very important role, and the librarian is one of the major coordinator for creating the policy requirements, policy compliance, along with the institution leadership or research supervisors, either researchers. Such like the FAIR principles, which is already Mary explained, and also the costing and the research data in the other disciplines. Yeah, when research data we're going to talk about, which is the major area of the research data being produced, we all can say that it's in the science and technology or the engineering, but the research data has also been there in this humanities and social science research, like the survey data. And second, the second stage will come to the collect and captures. Now, when after the collecting the data or the capture the data, what are the things can be researcher have to do? Whether they have to be store the data and regularly they have take the backup, then they must know that what are their duration taking the backups, and then after taking the backup, so they also look at that how they're documenting the research data. Now there are certain guidelines giving the metadata, what metadata should be followed and what are the guidelines should be there. Interestingly, there are metadata schemas. You guys knows that, means you professionals knows that what are the metadata schemas for the creating the digital objects. But we found the metadata schemas specifically for the research data, identifying the research data, for describing the research data irrespective of the disciplines. There are discipline-wise metadata scheme has been developed for describing the research data created, and also file management and format. There was a slide was mentioned about the different file formats, and we have to look at that which file formats and how we're going to manage to begin with, like the file naming, how we can give the file naming, which is going to be very help to identify. And there'll be hierarchy for managing the folders, maybe the date wise, and you can give the date or month or project's name. Those best practices comes for creating the guidelines. Means these are the services where the library can create the awareness to the researchers. And the third stage would be the collaborate and analysis. As libraries, means what are the library professionals do? It's like library professionals, whatever the work we do, it's been a collaborated work. And we are the right unit to collaborate with the other external and internal collaborators. If I say that who are the external collaborators and who are the internal collaborators related to the RDM activities, especially the research support unit or the institution leadership and IT and research IT means computer science people, research support units and research supervisors and dean and R&D administration unit. These people comes under the internal collaborations, and also looking up the external collaborators, especially external collaborators who the organizations or networks are the professional associations who have done the extension work on the research data management. Like the OCLC have been working this RDM, they have been come up with the series of research reports, and also there is a core data and the RDA, and also there are the ALA, such a professional association being they have been working on the research data management and been producing the working reports and research reports, how that research data can create the effective in the research in the scholarly communication system. And secondly, we have visualizations. Yeah, the visualizations, again, it's one of the another research support services where library can play the major role using the visualization tools and yeah, creating awareness with the workshops and seminars kind of things. And the fourth stage, which comes to the manage, store, and preserve. How we're going to manage the data? Means what are the major comes under the managing the data? If we are going to look at this, the majorly that comes to the preservation, security, and how we're going to data protections and protecting the personal identity informations and softwares. This is how the crucial part where we need the involvement of IT people, and we have to make sure that what is research data being protected and what is not. When we say that protecting the personal identification informations, it is always concerned with the researchers. What is the personal identity? By the names, by the some personal identity of informations, a personal like is a name, email address, phone number, those kind of data, and how we're going to protect. We should have that. Maybe the concerning the legal guidelines, checklists of data protections. What are the security we can put? There may be the passwords and data safe services, those kind of comes. And when we going to use that softwares, there are many softwares. I'll having the separate slide for the technologies being used for the research data management. And share and publish. See, under the share and publish stage, it's intellectual property. The IPR and copyright comes to the major important. They will have to look at the who hold the copyright rights for the research data generated by them. This is been again. This is where the policies is going to matter. If an institution create the policies, who hold the copyright rights and what level the research data can be made available to the public. Like we can put, there's an embargo, there's a restriction access, right? There's in the copyright resources, there's in like the protection agreement, the ownership of research data can be taken. At the same way, you might have know that in a licensing, like we have been talking about the open access, and the open access comes under the Creative Commons. All the licenses are there to publish the research article under the open access category. Related in the same line, we have the open license for the research data. There's a licenses for the licensed research data, and the Creative Commons is also one of that. And the open data common license, and there is a just separate services also providing the license related. And another thing is identifiers. The earlier what is happening when we kept the research data to the hidden, it is not going to be available to public. So when we kept this, there should be one identifier that we call as a DOI. To that DOI, the research data can be accessible to that, and linking to your publication to data, and where we have to deposit the data. See, where we have to deposit the data, like there are number of repositories now, research data repositories, like there will be a subject specific, generalized, and national and international repositories are there. And also the, there will be a allowed kind of things, means if you're going to publish the paper in the elsewhere, where they have given the guideline to publish, deposit their data and given the DOI. That's we'll have to look forward. And finally, this is again one more service as a discovery and reuse and cite. These are the practices of data citation and data metrics. Earlier, we have been talking about the citation of articles and chapters and those. So now this data citation is one of the more like that data citation is one of the more creating the discovering the research to the, and also it gives the more important to the research. And we have the data metrics, means we can look at it how data being used by the researchers doing the altmetrics, data metrics tools and their usage. All those can be created. Now we can look at it here. What are the tools and technologies that we required? As I mentioned that services being covered, and we need the certain technologies, tools and technologies at the creating the research data, providing the research data services to the users. When we're going to talk about the technologies or tools, the first more importantly comes to the repository softwares or repository softwares. Now, see, if as an institution would like to start the repository software, there are two ways. Like there are softwares with open source, Seekan and database there. It's an independent software, so one can install and do that. Other than that, there are platforms like ThinkSafe, Zonodo is there, where we can collaborate with them and have the repository for the institutional access. As I was mentioning about the metadata schema, right? This is how the metadata schema for the research data. If you can look at it here, especially data site metadata and qualified DC, those are there for generalized research data. And then also you can look at it, agriculture metadata element sets and astronomy and biological collections, and this comes under the subject specific metadata schemas. And we have the control vocabularies, how we can give the subject headings for this metadata, this research data, and also the identities, where are the tools and what tools we can use to creating the research data identifications. And also, for creating and editing a metadata, these are the tools that one can utilize for that, and cleaning the data and storing. And this data means what are the tools we have mentioned. This is going to come when we go for actually doing the research data management or creating the research data repository workflow. All the altmetrics and all the web applications and transferring the data, and also storing the data and cleaning data. And these are some of the examples. I'm just given the few examples, research data. Few examples of research data repositories. So you can see R3 data.org, it's a directory, and thinksafe.org, it's also directory. If we can go there, we will have the n number of research repositories being there in the public domain. And also, like the data was it's an open access platform. The one can individually log in and put the data. Like ThinkSafe, Zonodo is also there. And also, when we have, we can look at it, ICSSI data of services in Indian one, and manual data by the scholarly publishers. And when we have that research data repository by the publishers, as we have mentioned that, why the publishers needed for the research data management. As Madam also mentioning that the publishers and funders are looking research data properly managed and available to the public domain. That's the reason there are individual publishers, they have come up with their own individual repositories. If I say that elsewhere, IEEE or RSC, they have the individual repositories. If someone would like to publish the article from their platforms, they have given the guidelines to publish their data under their repository and link to the research article where published it. At the same way, if you can look at it, in the Sage and Springer, they have been collaborated with the ThinkSafe. It's a domain, right? It's a platform. They have been collaborated with the ThinkSafe. They have the different platform along with the ThinkSafe. The one can share the data and they can publish that. Interestingly, that on the right side, if you can look at it, they have been suggesting the public research data repository also. But it's not mean they have only restricted to the particular repositories. They have been suggesting the data repositories available in the public domain. And what researcher has to do, if you want to publish their data, they have to look at the author guidelines. They have to look at what policies publisher says, and if they suggested XYZ repository, they can deposit their data and taken the URL and submit their manuscript to the XYZ publishers. We have the policies here. Some of the policies we have mentioned in what publishers says about the data sharing. Interestingly, the maximum publishers saying that data sharing, it's a mandatory. And if you are going to submit the manuscript, you have to make sure that the research data being used for the manuscript available to the public domain. And as I mentioned that they also given the repository list of repositories over there. And you look at that, this is Cambridge University Press and Sage and the PLOS. We did a small survey kind of things to identify who are the publishers giving the what facilities for the research data management, and we found that the maximum, especially the maximum non-publishers, they have been providing the facilities and they were giving the research data opportunities to the researchers. And when we can look at it, how the funders and RDM policies, I've been debating the two sides, what international people say that and why and how the Indians are looking. If you are going to look at that international level, there's a European Council, Research Council, European Commission have come up with the report 2020, which is give the open access and scientific research and public research data. All the European countries, they have been doing that, and we have a NH policies by the NH, and we have the policies by the Wellcome Trust, and we have the policies by the National Science Foundations, and Cancer Research UK, and we have the policies for the NERC data policies. Means what we would like to specify here, there are demands we've been mentioning, they have been mandated by the publishers and also the funding agencies for managing the research data to the research throughout the research activities. And this is how the where we stands, in India, where we stands in terms of the research data management policies. I can say that the policies being available in India, it's not cover the fully what RDM policies required, but some of the policies cover the things like some of the points, some of things that related to the RDM. This is, I think you might already aware about that. DST has come up with the national data sharing and accessibility policies. It was, I think this is the first policies related to the data sharing, and we have the another open access policies by the NGO, that the open access and data management policies. They have highlighted all the research data planning and open access. And this is again the ICRA guidelines for the internal evolutions of research data policies. And ICSSR policies, how the data deposit and access. And recently, the ICSSR is 2015, and recently, I think 19 and 20, they're coming with the recent two policies, especially as a 19, the Department of Biotechnology. They are clearly come up with how the biological data been stored and accessed and made accessible to the public. In the policy, it's a draft actually, but the policies, they clearly say that what are the steps, how the data can be described and where they can deposit. They are been planning to create the national repository for the biological data storage as per this policies mentioned. And this is science and technology innovation policies. Again, this is the good sign that recently the what science and technology innovation policies has the open science, which is part of the research data and cover how the research data, publicly funded research, including data, must be available to the public without having any restrictions. Those kind of policies we have in India, but we can say that is a good begin. But yeah, still we in Indian, especially in the government and the national level, we are still lacking with the entire RDM policies, which is clearly taking the research data management into the concern. And what skills especially that we require as a library professionals, what are the skills we require? Most of things, the research data management would be a new domain. We need the certain skills which is irrespective of technicals and fundamentals, those skills from the both sides that we needed. And some of the skills what we were identified, like we need the training and ability of giving the trainings, the IPR and reading skills. And also we must know the data curation and processing skills, where the data curation processing skills would be a separate technical skills, the lot of technologies skills that are required. And we need the data management and preservations and ICTs, or the plan how we can work on, and also the subject domain. At the end, we need at least the basic subject knowledge of the research data being generated by the researcher. And what international level, some of the roles they have been mentioning, in India, it is not exact actually. They called as a data librarians, the curation librarians. They have been giving the specific designation to the people who work on specific work. This is we are not finding in India. Maybe in future we'll have to look at it. But this is how when we wanted to develop the skills, this is how this, the specific skill persons have the specific role and the specific responsibilities. The overall creating the research data management services. And I've been mentioning some of the source, especially this PPT will be going to share with participants through the ADINET. I think these are some of the course we have mentioned that, these are the course we're going to talk about the how RDM and then there are best practices and there are toolkits there to creating, there to develop their knowledge about the research data management. And some of the professional associations who have been working with, they have been working for the research data management. And their working groups also, like RDA have a specific working groups as research data management. And they have the country levels, like they have the country platforms and working groups for the research data management. Like Netherlands, they have a research data management at the left, and also the European level groups. This is how we are still in India. We don't have any working groups, especially focusing on the Indian research data management. But I can see that the many Indian professionals being connected with this working groups, and they have been contributing for the research data management. And benefits, what are the benefits? I think the most of the benefits are mentioned already covered by the Bhakti ma'am and a couple of my slide also. See the benefits by the funders and scholarly communities, and how the public have the benefits, and other research participants. The funders will make sure that they have funded to the research, the public research should be available to the public. They have the maximum return on investment. They went to the scholarly community. It is like open inquiry. When we have put my research at the one side and research data at the one side, research findings at the one side, research data one side, another researcher can look at it whether there is result from the XYZ research data would be a right or not. Right. Such kind of open inquiry they can put, and they promote the innovations. And as the public, they'll have a production of high quality of the research. And especially, the overall benefit to the researcher also, it can create the maximum values, maximum value of the research in terms of their visibility, in terms of their citations, in terms of their research. Is like it's always put that, good research comes along with the result and data. We thought that we would like to, give a couple of slides about that, how that research data management being practiced in India. It's in a sample survey data. We have just given the some of the findings what we found from the science and technology institution libraries, and a couple of questions were raised regarding their participation, RDM management and need assessment and policies. and services and RDM skills and management. We positively means we can always say that research data management is not like fully offer the services and all the library professor knows this how we can develop it. But the interesting thing that they are been working on the research data management or the developing their skills how it's going to work. But do they have agreed? If you can look at the skills and knowledge, they have been agreed that the Indian professionals do not have the such a skill that is required, but they wanted to have to. They would like to develop those skills in terms of the services. Yeah, we have gone through the websites and services. We found the maximum libraries do not have a specific RDM services. Now this is somehow we can say that India at the RDM services at the basic level now, but they have been working with the specific requirements, including the knowledge or the infrastructures. Maybe in future we as an institutions we would like to start from there. And what we have given here, we thought that how the research data services can be implemented in India, the way we should begin. We have given the some of the cycle means where we should begin in the Indian perspectives. When we had the discussions or when we had asked to the faculties, and most of people are not aware about that, or the most of researchers are not aware about that, what is the research data management. And that's the reason we as in India we would like to start beginning with the creating the awareness. If one can have the awareness about the how the research data management, why it is and how important in the scholarly communication systems, then we start they need to start with the collaborating, they need to start with the talking, they need to start with the working with the library professionals. And we found that we'll have to look at the need of researcher need assessment. Somehow we found that researchers actually need for this, but they are hidden, like they are not they have been not directly go to the libraries asking this, but they have been looking that such as services and also competencies development the internally. And yeah, we need those competencies from the library professionals, and also establishing collaborations with the external and internal stakeholders, and also forming the policies and the guidelines where it's kind of the, I can give the best example, like recently you might have seen that all the CFTI institutions, especially IITs, IIMs and others, they have started to putting their thesis in the Solberger repositories. It's been quite a debate now because the most of directors says we will not going to put, because being in our institute we have got the couple of the maximum number of queries why we wanted to put this the thesis because under the thesis we have the patents, we have the articles, it's a confidential documents, we have all the corporate guidelines. But when it comes to the policies, when it comes to the it comes to the ministries, right? When ministries policies comes, there those thesis has to put under the research data Swadringa repositories now without making any delays, and they have started to put it. Right. However, there are the situations, there are the cases. We are also been keeping some of the more important documents, which is not which is being required for the patent filing or any other requirements. See, I mean, this is how the policies can matter, and it forced to the researchers, it forced the library professors, it forced to the other stakeholders to develop the research data management practices in India. Then it's like the infrastructure developments. What are the core infrastructure development that we required? Maybe the all the infrastructure that into the softwares, or the hardware, or the manpowers, all the infrastructures, and the RDM services can be, what are the RDM services? What have been covered in the couple of slides that been more existing means there are a wide number of the RDM services. To begin with, we can start with the creating the repositories, putting their data and linking to the data into the publications and the research, and also keep evaluating the services will going to work. Means this is how the basically some of the thought how the library service implementation can start in India, giving with some of the points. We have some challenges, and these challenges we found that the most of challenges in India, and also the how the international people's been faced with the challenges for creating the research data management best practices. And yeah, the resource challenges, the people don't know what are the resources that we required. And there are a wide number of open access, open sources, open access resources available for the research data management, and fundamental challenges would be the basic knowledge about the RDM. A technical challenge, yeah, we don't have this such a technical challenge that we required, and policies, skills, and collaborating effort. And somehow we found that cultural changes and researcher openness were very poor in India, because of researchers always feel that, you know, their data they don't want to keep in the public domain. Those cultural change were that we needed, and low motivation, research ethics, and also limited staffing, and finally we funding and cost challenges would be facing. To sum up with what we did, it's in the webinar is covered to begin with. From the I think Rhoda ma'am has given the basic touch up the what research data management, and Bhakti ma'am has also covered that what is research data management, and research data, and who have been who are the data creators, and what is the importance of research data management. And for my things, I've been covered the research data support services, and what libraries and publishers and funders been mandate in terms of their policies and skills, right? And also challenges. These are the things, especially in terms of the RDM services, we found that as part of my research, we found a huge number of literatures and reports, and n number of toolkits and guidance. The only thing is, for in India, we just quickly have to look at those research documents are the best practices. For adapting them, we have to look at that how we can adopt those practices. You know, maybe this is not a new, we can find it from all the top ranking university libraries and what they are doing, but only adoption, we have to look at it, what services, how we can adapt. That's the biggest challenge for us yeah, in Indian case. I think yeah, this is how part of my presentations, and if you'd like to have questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Bhakti and Manu, for giving us such an in-depth presentation about RDM, starting from the importance of RDM, the benefits, all the way up to the online courses, etc. It was really a very, very informative webinar, I'm sure. Maybe we need to have a group of librarians working in India on RDM so that we can learn from each other. It will help us to address any challenges, etc., which we face. So now the questions, I think Nishta has raised her hand, and Manish also, I think, wanted to talk. Yes, Nishta, would you like to ask?
I was just wanted to ask Manu, have you been able to identify any institute in India who's carrying out or which has got a mandate of RDM in their institute?
Yes, actually, ma'am, I can say it's a no. But the complete policies is not been developed by any Indian institute. Especially, I can what I will survey the science and technologies. But initially, initially the work have been started like from IIT Delhi, and what we were hello.
Sonal, would you please mute yourself? Sonal?
Yeah, I think I'll go ahead. Ma'am, yeah, what I would like to say that, we don't find any institutions which are there mandate the research data management. At least the data should be shared to the institute, right? But we found that there are the discussion happening with the IIM Bangalore librarian. What madam was saying that they have been discussing with the library committee and the research units to come up with the policies regarding that. At the same way, I can say that maybe we in IIT Delhi, we had the discussions about that, how we can go forward and who people can be involved to this process. Because couple of faculties, we found the interested this research data, how we can manage it. Because in case of IIT Delhi, we have a separate R&D unit where entire research being managed there, but they don't have any clear about the research data. Right.
Unless the institute makes it mandatory,
Right,
researchers are not going to do it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Manish, would you like to ask something?
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. See, the first question which I had was a very basic. Would you consider knowledge management and RDM as some kind of relationship, or they are two separate entities? Because in knowledge management also we have very similar kind of requirements. Just a thought.
Okay. Bhakti ma'am would like to take this.
Yeah. So I would say that research data management would be a subset of that, because when we're talking about data management, we are going down to the core raw level of the data, right? So there will be definitely differences in the tools and technologies which are going to be used to manage the data versus managing knowledge. Right. So because knowledge comes in so many different forms. Okay. And so there again, their appearances and the varieties in the way they are being they're found everywhere in the scholarly communication and also maybe in your explicit and tacit knowledge. But where data would be concerned, we would be focusing more on the explicit part, right? So I think what you could, at this stage, we can say that it can be a subset, but at the same time, you cannot have the same tools, technologies, which can be applied to data management, which may be applied to knowledge management. That will not be possible.
Okay. Yeah, I think the presentation was really, really good. And I have a second question, if you allow me.
Yes, please.
So when we are looking at the data sharing, are we looking at the raw data sharing, or are we looking at the publication per se? Because publications sharing is anyway becoming is kind of norm, but not the data per se. Because you were referring to patented kind of a scenario where the data becomes very, very crucial. So can you explain a bit on that?
Yeah. So what we would like to say on this, especially when data sharing comes, the most important data would be sharing under the raw data. Yeah, the raw data, when we say that after the publications of the research, let's say, I am a PhD scholar, I completed my research and submitted my thesis. Yes. What my part of the thesis, there's a data in my thesis, that's been organized, that's been presented in the graphical and tabular format. But behind that, there is some data being collected to the survey, collected to the literature review, other data. Means the data being shared to, if I want to make that data to the physically, which that data to the publicly available, which is going to help the researchers, what have been created the tables and graphs, how that created, means what is the base of those data. And someone can interpret that, I come up with the different tables or the different figures. Someone can also come up with the different result in terms of the data. Yes. Means, so obviously I can say that, more importantly, the data which is supported for the creating the research result.
Got it. Thanks, Manu.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Shailesh, would you like to ask something or say something?
Yeah. See, one thing I have seen it, about the research data management, even at MICA, I could see that there is a lack of wills to support this initiative. I don't know what is the back of the mind behind the research community, but they are not open or willing to come forward. They are always scared that my data will be shared, used by other people. So I think there is a lot of awareness and initiative required to bring them out from these things. That is one part of it. Secondly, we are active user of the Before going to that part, Manish has already explained about given his observation remark about this presentation. This is marvelous presentation. Let me tell you honestly, covering every aspect of it, right from starting to end, I've seen it, I joined, 10 minutes late, but, I've seen it. I'm quite impressed with it. We actively use the government data. We have used 91 census data, we have used 2001 data, and we are using 2011 data, and currently we are using many other government data also, like Ministry of Agriculture, crime data, fertilizer consumption data, audit bureau of circulation data, ration card data, what not we are using it. The most important part is that many times we cannot use this data directly. For example, I'll tell you RBI statistics, RBI deposit data or RBI credit data. See, when they say rural is clear, but when say urban, there is a metropolitan, semi-urban, urban. So many times you need to reprocess the whole data. You able to use directly all the data. Same way in case of crime, crime is happening, but there is a CID, there is anti-corruption, there are many things. So you need to how to allocate the data, how to put appropriately the data. There is another big challenge which comes in front of us. Say, in 2011, 640 districts data have been released. Now, if you look at it, 766 districts, and yet the census data has not come out. And when it will come out, nobody knows about it, And when you want to, give the, allocate the resources, population data, so many other data based on 2000, it's a big challenge. Since last 1 year, I'm working on 766 districts, Now it's going to be over now, but and 3 people are working on it. It's a very challenging job, and data accuracy, perfection. You need to explain everything that the methodology part could be how you have done it, the whole process. You need to explain. So this is the big challenging task, and one has to be very careful, because in data I would say hero is zero. Zero is hero. Because every calculations, comes, there should not be any difference in the data. So I always say zero is hero. That is one part. The technology part we need to use, like, we need to know the software part, like Python, Tableau, even Excel. You have to be very, powerful in it, otherwise very difficult to handle like 6 lakh villages level data at a MICA village marketing. Same way 4,000, tehsil level data. So these are all big challenges, and we have put the publicly data, like if you go to the MICA Mimi, there are 2 things, where a knowledge center is there and where the socio-economic report is there, which we put it publicly, this data, and we have, use government data, so we have no right to hold it. So anybody can use it, and when we launched the Mimi, though it was government data, we obtained the copyright from the government of India. That is one thing. And wherever we have used some known government data, we took permission from associations like Audit Bureau of Circulation. They said you cannot give the name of the newspaper. Aggregate number, you can use it, but don't mention that. So we have to respect those things, So I would say all of you to, look at the MICA Mimi, the knowledge center and the socio-economic review. We have put publicly, for the day-to-day use, So this is I wanted to, but I would like to say congratulations. Both of you. Great.
Thank you, Shailesh. Is there anybody else who would like to make a comment or ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, if you don't mind, I have a small doubt to Bhakti, ma'am.
Yes, please identify yourself.
Ma'am, myself, S. Raja. I'm from Central University of Gujarat. I'm pursuing my Master Library Science.
Yes.
Ma'am, my doubt is like, as Bhakti ma'am said, collected data like that save the time of the 8 months. So if researcher is agree to share the data, how to acknowledge the researcher or a data? Is it a way of the citation or putting a reference?
It's a good question, Raju. Quite a good question. Yes, it's very, very important. It's also part of integrity, right? Research integrity and ethics. You
Yes,
are
please.
using somebody's data. So you can, if you are essentially, there are two ways of doing it. When I did my research, there was still a lot of lack of awareness about how do you go about citing the data. We were not, I mean, the data citation was still not even there in the picture. But yes, acknowledgement was critical. I had acknowledged the person who shared his whole raw data with me, for using it. So acknowledgement, you can do it by either mentioning them in the name in your publications, in your scholarly publications, wherever you're presenting. Or for example, today also I'm like mentioning that, yes, I was helped by Walt Crawford. He helped me because he gave me a lot of data. You can also cite it nowadays, just the way we have these reference sources, the way you cite your reference sources, you can cite the data also in your references if you are using actual core data. So yes, it is very important that we cite it either in the form of acknowledgement or in the form of reference citations, whichever is applicable. I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Yes. Is there anybody else? Yes.
Today, ma'am, I would like to ask a question.
Yes, Rashmi, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Bhakti and Manu, for this wonderful presentation. So having seen the journey, it's always exciting to hear it once again. So my question is, Manu, you have mentioned about the professional associations and networks, okay, but most of the associations and networks are not from India. Are there any professional associations or networks in India which have taken up this issue? Have they made any efforts? Not necessarily in library science, but other disciplines also.
Ma'am, in the Indian context, library professionals, especially like they create, sorry, may I audible, right? Yeah. Yeah, ma'am, in the Indian context, what I have been seen with in terms of library professionals, it's like we don't have any working groups. Are there any association have taken that how the research data can be managed? But I have seen the individual professionals, they have been doing it, but not a professional association. Like I can example of the many Indian association that what we have, like ILA or library teacher associations and other associations. No, we don't have these specific working groups, or they're continuously working on it.
I think, Manu, I may add that a few years ago, we would have core data used to collaborate regularly, right, in hosting these data workshops, data management workshops, although not dedicated to RDM, but they were actively involved here with different institutions.
We had attended one workshop in InfibNet, I believe.
Right. Means this is, yeah, the collaboration has been happening, like the collaborations with the UK Data Archive. There was a workshop at InfibNet, as rightly ma'am, you have said that the UK Data Archive had the collaboration with even InfibNet, and their the Harvard data was the experts that came at IIT Gandhinagar. At the same way, the DITC had the conferences. The collaborations has been there, but it's been taken the lead by the institutions, by the individually, like except the InfibNet. After that, we don't have the any association or network initiative taken on the research data management.
So it means that we have a huge scope for the networks and associations to take up this cause, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Rashmi, not only networks and associations, but also LIS departments. We could also, because these are skills also which need to be now taught and developed, right? So there is a scope for collaborations among a lot of stakeholders here.
Yeah. Good food for thought. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or statements? If not, shall we close this? Thank you once again. Yes? Yes, who is it?
Ma'am, Krutika. Krutika from
Krutika.
Sindh.
Yes, Krutika, please ask.
Ma'am, first of all, I want to ask Manu Bhaiya, that what are the softwares for research data management planning? He talked about the planning aspect, and there are softwares.
Right.
But in the technology and tools section, I was unable to get that. So are there any softwares, freely available software for research data planning aspects? Or what are the soft skills? Another question is, what are the soft skills required to defeat the challenges you mentioned, other than the technical or that skill, personality skills? These two questions.
Okay. See, what you have mentioned about the research data management planning, right? The planning in terms of the software, what we have, like the open source software, so like the DMP online. There are DMP online is there, data management plan. There's another software, the data management plan, and DMP online. Such like we have the multiple research data management planning softwares. These two are majorly used, but yeah, if you can look at it, I think I'll be sharing with you later on. We have the list of 7 to 8 data management softwares that yeah, we're going to help to create the research data management planning that give the template kind of things. When the template means
Yeah.
it's in the entire research process, the how we are going to manage, how we're going to do the research. Those softwares will go with the template, the way we have to put your how your research journey, and then you can create the documents out of it, right? And the second questions, what you are mentioning about the soft skills, right?
Yes, the other skills that like we have the skills, but we can't express, or we can't approach the data providers. What are that skills that are required to defeat the challenges that you mentioned?
The one thing is we should know that the process, how we can look at it. When we don't have the process and how we can deal with the faculties or the students or the research admin, it's quite difficult if you know that how we can do that. But it's depending upon the channel established by the institute. The first we have to understand who are the core people. I'm just talking about that, within the institute, and who are the core people who have been involving with the research activities. Let's take an example of the IIT Delhi. In our institute, what we have in terms of the core, when I want to talk about the core, looking after the research activities, we have a IRD unit. The entire research projects are the fundings being by the IRD unit. In such case, what we have to do, we have to collaborate with the IRDD, and leading with collaborate with IRDD, and then we have to connect with the faculties who have been interested with that. Means I think the smartness, one, we just have to understand that how under the institutional umbrella, how and who are the leading people and where we have to collaborate, right? Unless as a library professionals, no one is going to come to us, then we have to take forward and look at it, and who are the people who can collaborate and work with them. Anyway, as Silas also was mentioning, it's a quite difficult job, and we will face like IITs and the institutes like CFDI, we will face the many comments and problems. I think, if you're going to take the right step and the right process, establishing the policies from the right authority, that will going to help us.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you, Bhaiya. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
If I may, I'm Saroj.
Yes, Saroj. Yes,
Yeah.
Saroj.
Hi, Bhakti and Manu. It's a great presentation, and congratulations for the work that you have carried out. Yeah, what I understand is there are no specific institutions in India who are actually already implemented this RDM in their specific organization. Is that correct, Manu?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now the thing is, how do we plan to make this happen?
Right.
I mean, do we wait for the government to form policies, or do you think the library professionals need to come out with a policy? Who is going to do that?
Right. I think there was a slide. Yeah, let me speak in this way. Right. Obviously, we can't wait till the government has to come out. Right. Secondly, when the policy stakeholders, the libraries has to come up with that creating the policies. But again, sir, what I in my last slide was mentioning the how we can do that. Means that process is going to begin with the creating the awareness. If I want to speak with about the my faculties, my institute about this, I'll have to create an awareness the how I can involve the faculties for it. Means I'll have to at the end I can say that it might be the two with other institutions. The faculties are the backbone for creating the any services or infrastructure of the institute. Right. When we have in such a scenario, we just have to creating the awareness with the faculties and looking after that how we can create the policies from the institution side. And interestingly, my research is what findings was saying that my research is not more focusing on the developing the institution means Indian level. It is a minor focusing how we can develop the RDM service at the institution level. Right. When we say that institution level, I can see that I think, sir, I visited in your campus also.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do
Even I visited, met Nista ma'am so during my starting with this journey also. At the same way, we had, I personally had the communicated with the faculties how we can begin with. Means I at the same way we related to that we had created the questions and asked the faculties, and most of the faculties are quite happy with the share the data among the institute, not to the public. Right. I think that is the begin with we'll have the institutionalized infrastructure. For let's say I worked my research. Let this data can be available to the all the CUG community to begin with. I think that's the policies we can start to begin with under the institution wise, and later on I truly believe that later on all the government and the funding agencies, maybe the ministries will going to take the later part. To begin with, I think this is the right way, and to start the research data management within the institute, data sharing, and also policies and restrictions we can put under the within the institution access.
All right.
Right.
Yeah, I have another curious query as such. Since nowadays there are a lot of machine generated data. This is a machine learning age, and people are using artificial intelligence, and a lot of data is being created through machines. Is the study also? Do you also have some idea as to how that data is going to be, let's say, used or reused? Is there a technological or have you visualized that kind of management of such data which is being generated through AI and machine learning, deep learning?
Technologies related to the AI and deep learning means I can clearly say that I'm not much aware about those in particularly how we can visualize. But yeah, there are visualization tools will going to help to means visualizing the big data which is being generated from the AI and machine learning tools. But in terms of the management, yeah, the entire process of RDM still locking with the data, like which is available physically or physical data. Like what what is the limitation if I'm going to say that? But there's no clear, especially the how we can preserve, how we can make available to the data which is physically available. Right.
Okay. Thank you.
A lot of awareness needs to be created, Saroj.
Yeah, that is what
all the persons who are creating the data, all the persons who are using the data, a lot of awareness needs to be created. This presentation will be kept on our ADINET website, and we also have a YouTube channel. I think now it is almost 1:45 and time to close this. Thank you once again, Bhakti and Manu, for this very excellent presentation. Thank all the participants, and let's see how this gets more. We can spread this a little more. How? With talks and write-ups, etc. We have to do something about it. Thank you once again. Thank you, Vaibhav, for being there, and Sangeeta for including this.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. So
Thank you,
shall
ma'am.
we close?